Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. On top beside me is Gary Groob. And down below, Paul Stewart, player and coach. He's going to let us know what it's all about being involved in lacrosse, from being a player to a coach. But, Paul, the first question we always ask after we say thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We always ask this important question. Are you ready for it? You sitting down?
I'm sitting down.
Okay. Why'd you pick up a stick?
I picked up a stick. So when I was younger, my parents are immigrants from Northern Ireland. My dad came here and he started as a bank teller, and he progressed a lot. And he wanted to be successful, and we moved around a lot. I had lived in Whitby and seen lacrosse, but never tried it. And then I saw on television, I think it was the old NLL with the Whitby Steelhawks and the Brantford Warriors. I got a really late start, and I just if it was that or it was something else, but that was part of it. And I fell in love with it. And I asked for a lacrosse stick for Christmas, and I got I remember I got an STX Excalibur, a black one with traditional stringing and a wooden shaft that, I think they basically just cut the tree down and stuck the head on the end of it, and a ball. And I didn't know what to do. There was no coaching where we lived. And then we moved back to, we were out in Nova Scotia at the time. We moved back to, I wanted to move back to Whitby, but unfortunately we moved to Aurora, and East Gwillimbury started lacrosse. And then I went into high school, and we had a high school lacrosse program. And I don't know what it was. I just fell in love with it. And I just, every lacrosse player's, best friend is a brick wall. And I had one at the side of my house. I had a net in the backyard, and eventually I had to repair the fence so many times that I stuck to the brick wall. I also stuck to defense after that, but there was just something about it. And then as I got to play with better guys and see, playing in like CD lacrosse in East Gwillimbury, which is now the Newmarket Redbirds Association, I thought it was good. And then I got invited or drafted actually by Whitby, and I came out here, and man, it was just so different. It was just so much better, so much faster. There were no balls on the ground, and I was playing catch up my whole life, but it was just something beautiful about it. People see it on TV, and we'll get to this later. Sort of one of my pet peeves. I love the fighting aspect of it and all that, but it seems to get a lot of the attention. Whereas every game, there's so many skilled plays that are so good, and people don't realize how hard it is and how talented these guys are to do them. I wish that was more of the focus, but I mean, that's basically, I don't know, that's the short answer, but that's it. Just seeing that. And then, out here getting to go see the Redmond play. And that was, in the years with John Fusco, Derek Keenan, Tom Reggett, and then the Gates came. And then, Paul left, and I actually had the opportunity to be there for a bit in Six Nations with him. But watching at that level, then the Man Cups in Brampton, when before all the guys went to Six Nations, when we'd play at Memorial, when there were guys literally sitting on the rafters because it was so packed, and it was amazing. Like, it's just, I know there are guys now like Gary and, your travel buddy, Nigel, and some of these guys who go to a game every night. Unfortunately now I'm not able to, but if I could, I probably, in the summer 3 years ago, it was 3 boys playing. Now I have 2 boys in junior. I am at a game almost every night, but I think if I could watch a game every day, I would. Like, it's the greatest game in the world. I'm a box lacrosse guy, but going to get to see, I've been down to, I think, every Cornell home game this year, and seeing Division I college lacrosse at the top 10 level, it's awesome. Like, it's just a beautiful game, and I'm just lucky to be a part of it.
Now that he's answered our first 10 questions, Gary. No, because I was going to ask him what kept you in the game. I think you answered that question
Yeah.
beautifully. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll replace that question with the transition from being a player to a coach.
Well, so I joked about this with somebody yesterday. Is I always sort of considered myself the worst player in the best league and everything I was in. I was playing. I was behind. I didn't always get a ton of minutes. When I moved down, sometimes I did. I got better. I mean, I ended up being a pretty good defender. I was the captain of a team more than once, but because I had to. I lacked the experience and my skill level was behind. My fundamentals and my positioning and my understanding had to be better than everybody else, or as good as everyone else at least, um, to have a shot at making a team. Um, maybe I wasn't going to score the pretty goal or do whatever, but positionally, I had to know where my body had to be. I had to know where my slide had to come from. Had to know when to be helped. I had to know where to go, and I had to understand the game and show that I could do sort of all the little things and was willing to go in the corners and do that stuff and mix it up sometimes. And it sort of that became my understanding of the game got better. And then I sort of got into coaching just because I was back sort of in Aurora and they didn't have a lot of coaches, and I got to leave and go play some junior and had a bit of experience. So I started doing it then. I realized I am pretty good at this. And then my big transition came actually, and I started to tell Gary this before we went on air. Through my playing days, I met a guy named Marty O'Neill, and Marty O'Neill is a great friend of mine. I love the guy to death, but anyone who knows Marty knows he doesn't like spending a lot of money. And when he would come to Ontario, he would quite often stay at my ex-wife's place. And when her and I were together, she said, "Oh, do you know Marty?" Blah blah blah. He came, we stayed, and he was interviewing 4 people for an assistant coaching job for the Minnesota Swarm. We stayed up all night, and he asked me what I thought of them all, and then we went through it. He ended up hiring somebody, but then the next day he called me, and it was like, at the end of the night, after talking to you, you were my favorite out of all the candidates. How would you like a job? And he hired me as a scout, and just completely out of the blue. I didn't have the resume to be a scout. I didn't have the experience, but he gambled on me, and I did a pretty good job. By the end of the year, I was on the bench, and then at the end of the year, New York Titans came into the league as an expansion team, and they hired our head coach, Adam Mueller. And Adam called me and asked me to go with them and be on the bench full time. And I called Marty, and Marty just answered the phone. He said, "Listen, I know why you're calling. If you don't go, you're stupid. If you don't like it, you can have your job back." And that was that. And I was a full-time coach for the New York Titans. That lasted a few seasons, and then Adam decided that he was done with coaching and wanted to spend some time with his family. And Eddie Como came in, and he brought in his own staff. So I was gone there, and I was picked up by Philadelphia. I did that for a couple of years, and working with Dave Huntley, that led to moving on to the Toronto Nationals and Team Canada. So it all sort of it was one of those things. I caught a break, and I sort of made the most of it. And there were times where I thought I was in way over my head, but I faked it well enough until I figured out how to do it. And then, in order to stay sharp, I took some jobs in the summer. I worked with the Gales, which was just a great experience, until the final game where we lost in the championship by then the Redmond and then Brampton. And in between, the national team and then the Adler thing, which never really worked out. The team didn't end up going, but then I coached in the NAG, which is the North American Indigenous Games, and won a gold medal there. And that was that was definitely a highlight. I still see some of the kids, and well, they're not kids anymore, but it was a great week. So
Right.
yeah, that was my transition. I think while I was sitting on the bench as a player, rather than pick my fingernails, I paid attention and learned, and it paid off for me.
You were a player that I think, I guess the label I'd give is that you didn't work. Nobody worked harder than you did on the floor.
Yeah, well, some people work as hard, but yeah, I'd like to think nobody worked harder, and you know, I would say, yeah, I had to, I really have a lot of respect for guys like that. I was, especially the guy, like, I remember my first year, like I played with Sean Williams, and he was the best player on the floor, and he still worked harder than everybody else. Like, if you ever watch that guy run on and off the floor, like when he was coming off, it was dangerous to be standing near the door because he'd run you right over, And but it's also like I had very good coaches, but I also had really good like peer role models. So yeah, I did take pride in how hard I worked. So thank you, I appreciate that.
And that would be, and this is my last a comment, and you can build on it, and Gary can take over. You kind of expect that from your players.
Oh yeah,
it's so important.
Yeah, so that's Jason Crosby. When I worked with him, he used to, he had a great saying that he said, "Hard work will always beat talent when talent doesn't work hard." And there's like the biggest coach killer in the world is potential. And if you get all these guys with potential who don't work, and they'll never make it. Where you see guys who, maybe you didn't realize they were as good as they were, and they go out and they're coming back to the bench after every shift and they're half dead, and those are the guys that you want. You get 5 or 6 of those guys, you'll never lose a game, right? So
right. Would it be just safe to say that you saw the game differently even as a player than most of the other players, which elevated you into coaching?
Well, so 100%. It's actually, I can tell you a funny story. Gavin Prout and I used to be very good friends, and he one of the best players. Everybody knows who he is, and we would watch video together. And I loved watching video with him because it was like he was watching a totally different game.
Right.
He was watching it from the perspective of a guy who could sort of do everything. And, for instance, like if I was on offense, which I wasn't a lot, but I had to get myself into a position where I knew I had a really good chance. I had to set my feet. I had to have a screen to shoot around, and I had to know where I was shooting, whereas he just, shot when he felt like it, and his ball would go in more than mine. So I did. It's some of the best compliments I get is when I just recently I was at the Firewolves game, and a couple of the people we had a suite. We were quite fortunate. And a couple of people there said that like they had no idea what was going on, and they wouldn't have if they weren't sitting with me. But there's been other times where people just don't want to be anywhere near me during a game. So it's, it's sort of it's a hit and miss thing, right? But
sure.
But yeah.
I want to drill back a bit into your playing days because, you were in a number of places in your junior years, Caledon, Mississauga, Aurelia, Scarborough. That wasn't uncommon of the day though. Nowadays, you've got zones, you've got this, it wasn't so uncommon. Talk to us a little bit about traveling around to all the different teams, all the different systems that you had to learn.
Well, so what happened was I got drafted by Whitby and I got cut, and their junior B team was Huntsville, and it was too far. My parents didn't want me driving. There was no billet. They weren't going to billet a guy, the 18th player. I played a few games and I was okay. So I went to I played intermediate, and then my next year I made the Scarborough Saints, and that's when we went A.
Right.
So that was back when there were 3 lines. So I was a much better defender, but so I learned to set picks because I wasn't a great shooter. Then we sort of switched offense defense, and I got traded to Mississauga, but I was sort of transitioning into my career at the time, and their junior B team was Caledon, and it was closer. So I went there, and that's where I met Zenny Lipinski.
Mm-hmm.
He was my coach, and he was great because he taught hard-nosed defense, and they saw that I didn't each. Sort of very much like my son Trent now. I wasn't great at taking away the ball, but I didn't get beat very often. And when the ball was on the ground, I picked it up, I looked for somebody, I passed it, and I got off. And Zenny helped me really, really well with learning how to switch from a man to a zone and spacing and stuff. And then I was playing field lacrosse. I met Scott Balkwell, and he convinced us we worked out a deal where I went to Aurelia, and my friend Mike Gatt and I basically moved to his cottage for the summer, spent the summer in Aurelia, won a Founders Cup, and I went back the next year, but that's when I got promoted with the police department. And I was, we went back into it. The way it worked was you did like a month of in-service training, then you went away for 3 months, then you did another month. And so I was on straight days, and it was hard to commit. So I couldn't move up to the cottage, and it was, a 2-hour drive. So for my final few games, Cam Devine did me the favor. I was going to have to quit lacrosse, but he was going to try to send me back to Scarborough, but I ended up in Mimico. And in Mimico, I actually played a little bit of offense, which was weird. But by then, my skills had improved. Cam Devine in Aurelia was great because his practices were so technical and all about throwing and catching and running. And I really got better because of him. So I ended up in Mimico. I want to say for about 3 or 4 games in one round of the playoffs where the Gales beat us, and that was the end of my junior career. But I would say, unfortunately now that Zenny's passed, but I still keep in touch, and I still have friends from every team I was on.
Right.
I took something from every team I was on, whether it was, learning something or just some sort of motivational thing or whatever. But
Sure.
But I mean, it would have been nice to be in one place for 5 years, I'm sure. But, moving around, I got to know people, you get to make contacts, and, you never know who you're going to run into, right? So.
Right. Well, let's talk about the Aurelia, the Founders Cup run.
Yeah.
First of all, what do you remember most about that run? And then really, was there a moment when you all realized, hey, we can win this?
Well, so they had won it the year before, and I think they went in expecting to win. It was fun for me because I'd never won before. Like, I'd never won anything. Like, Scarborough Saints Junior A, I think maybe we won 2 games. Caledon, I don't remember if we made the playoffs, maybe, but no. And it was a good team, and they'd won the year before, but they graduated some very good players, like Doug Noganosh and Richie Marwick, a bunch of guys. So there were other guys who really had to step up, and it was a really tight. Like, I love the teams sort of from small towns that we all went out together after every game. The bus rides were fun. We were a tight group, and we knew that. It was they're the St. Catharines Athletics now, but they were called something else before. Not Niagara. No, they're Spartan Warriors. They're called the Spartan Warriors, and we knew they were our big competition, and we battled with them. And then when we beat them in the playoffs, we sort of knew that we were the team to beat, and we had a real good coaching staff, kept us focused. It's hard when the Founders Cup was in St. Catharines, and when you're that age and you're in a hotel together for a week and you're only playing one game sometimes, it's hard to, it's for the coach. And I've learned this as I'm older now, you're more of a babysitter than a coach. And, but we took it really seriously, and we practiced in the parking lot during the day and took it as a business trip. And then when we got back home, the city put a little parade on for us and took us all through the town in fire trucks and stuff. And like maybe a couple hundred people came out, but it seemed like a lot more at the time, So it was great.
Absolutely. Well, the question always is, what separates a good junior B team from a national champion? But I really think the answer there is guys like you, character players. Everybody has their top guys. Everybody has their top talent. It's how good your character guys can fit in. That is what's the structure and the all the foundation of it.
No, I agree. First, I think, like, first of all, and we saw this in the National Lacrosse League this year, is you're not winning a championship unless your goaltender's on. I mean, that's huge. And yet you have guys who can take over a game, but it's secondary scoring, and it's transition, but it's also it's little things like, you know, running off the floor, getting on and off the bench, and the other, you know, it's also being unselfish. Like, if you look at the game sheet from most championship games, you know, you'll have your guys, you know, like you watch, you know, last 3 years with the Buffalo Bandits, you see Dane and you see Byrne with their numbers, but there's the 3, 4, 5, 6 guy all have 1 or 2 as well. And it's teamwork. It's the sort of character guys focusing on their role. Like, if your role is to go in the corner and get the ball and pass it and get off, nobody wants to see you running up the floor and staying on every third shift. Right. And it's really buying into the team concept. And it's you know, it's also, you know, when you get to a tournament, like, you know, the Minto Cup now, it's a tournament. I don't love it as much as when it was 7 games, but it's those tournaments when you're playing 3 and 4 games in 2 and 3 days, it's exhausting. So it's also who practiced the best all year, who's in better condition, who's, you know, making sure their players aren't going out at night, and who's eating properly, and it's all those things that matter. So
right. Now, when you were on the bench, and I imagine this question changed as you went further across, were you the guy that asked the questions or answered the questions? And I'm thinking that it started with asked and finished with, you know, by closer to when you were done playing, moving to coaching was answered the questions.
Yeah, it was so. Yeah, so it's funny. I've never been asked that before, but I do ask a lot of questions. One of the things I learned, like, there's sort of the 3 guys that helped me the most in coaching were Adam Mueller, Dave Huntley, and Bob McMahon. And I was lucky because I could lean on them. But the one thing I learned that all 3 of them do is you surround yourself with smart people. And, you know, one of the big things with Adam was if you were coaching the defense, you should never see your team score, because when your defense comes off, you should be talking to them. You should be explaining things. And I did. It's funny when I was talking about how I got, I guess, fired from New York and Eddie wanted his own people. Sean Ferris, who replaced me, he was, I want to say he was in Rochester before that. And he and I were good friends, and we would compare notes. So if, you know, even if I was doing it now, you should never stop asking questions. You know, if we were playing a team, I would call him, I'd watch the tape, and I'd say, hey, how did they do this with you? And you know, what does this guy do? And how do we react to that? And then he would call me back. So I think I did answer more than I asked towards the end, but if you stop asking questions and you start thinking you know everything, you're almost always wrong. So, you know, if I have some advice for coaches out there, it's always listen to other coaches. You don't always have to take their advice, but, you know, it's always good to hear a different perspective and see how you feel about it. So,
right. Now, as a scout, when you first got in with Marty, I've had a number of scouts on Doddridge and a bunch of other guys, and they all look for something different. Was there anything in particular you were looking for to report back about a player?
So it's interesting. And so we had 2 different systems. In the field lacrosse, when we were scouting, we would have sort of 3 things. We would have hold, show, or go. And basically, it was a guy, when you're defending him, could you ever leave him? And, you know, did you want to stay on him no matter what? if you're the guy has the ball, do you want to show like you're going to double or do you want to double? And, things like that. We would always look for, quite often, coaches in the National Lacrosse League, there's TV timeouts and things like that. And quite often teams will run a set play after a TV timeout or a timeout. You would want to know that. You would want to know their setup for their man up, their man down. Did they run a box? Did they run a diamond? What plays did they do? How could we disrupt them? And then, for players, certain players have tendencies, and how you could best do to stop. Like, for instance, Dan Dawson was going to do his swim move all the time. Now, the problem was you knew he was going to do it. It's just impossible to stop. Dane Smith has a little half step. He cuts around, shoots the ball at the goalie's hip. He does it 5 times a game. He still scores 3 times. They're going to do it. You can't stop it. But if you can predict what's coming, you can do your best to sort of mitigate it. And, you find out, certain teams, like if you watch that, I know you're at the President's Cup. You watch that Snake Island team, second the goalie made the save, they were up the floor. So you knew as soon as you shot, the guy closest to the bench had to get off right away, or it was going to be a breakaway. Like little things like that. There's some goaltenders now that can't pass. So that you can pressure the ball a little bit, but there's other goalies that the second they have it, it's gone. Just sort of things like that are
Right.
what we would look for.
With the way that everything is going with NCAA, with PLL, does Box still produce the best offensive players in the world, or is that changing?
I still think that the best players are box lacrosse players offensively, and but there is a bit of a transition, and it used to be that the Canadians had the best stick skills and the Americans were the best athletes. They're sort of coming together now. Like American skills are getting better, and Canadians are becoming better athletes. They're taking it a lot more seriously. There's programs like the Hill Academy and Everest, and all the Canadians going down south, like my boys did. But even the best Americans, like I know we're going to touch on this later, but my son's at Cornell for his first year, but he committed 2 years ago. So I've basically watched every Cornell game for the last 3 years. And CJ Kirst is among the best players I've ever seen, and he's killing it in Toronto. But I don't think he's as good as he is if he doesn't come up and work for Donville one summer and play for Mimico. And I think the best American player of all time, Casey Powell, came up and played for the Beaches. And there are some very good box across leagues. There's the Baltimore to Burns League. Shaden Santos has his U.S. Boxla, and it's getting better and better. But it's not Junior A in Canada or BC or I guess Alberta now, where when you play a playoff game, every time you touch the ball, you're getting hit, and it's the ability to throw and catch in space and spatial awareness and doing all these things in traffic. You can't mimic that in a field lacrosse game. There are some very good players who make the transition, but I think a lot of American coaches now are integrating box lacrosse into the practice plans. But I truly believe that if you are a sort of a stud American player and you want to take your game to the next level, you need to spend a summer in Canada. Like,
Right.
Look at Roy's kid, Ryan Colsey, went to BC last year, and look how much better it made him. And there's a few.
Joey Spallina for that.
So that's the name I was thinking of, Joey Spallina. He's. I mean, I really enjoyed him. I'm glad he's gone from junior. I'm tired of him lighting us up, but he was excellent, and there are others, but it makes all the difference. And I don't think I know he broke I think Michael Powell's record. I know he broke Casey's a few weeks ago. I think he might have broken Michael's too. He doesn't do that if he doesn't come to Orangeville.
Yeah.
He's still great, but the fact that he got to play, college field lacrosse is so good and so fast. Some people don't like it. I think they're nuts. But when you get into a good junior summer game, the ball's moving faster in tighter spaces. They're hitting harder, and the skill set that you develop, it's invaluable. So, yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, you've had a chance to work with some of the greatest coaches around and help build your ideas on it. I still think the best one of the bunch is just an absolute legend here, and that's Dave Huntley.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Toronto Nationals and the 2009 season, and of course the championship. But putting that thing together, having Huntley as the head coach, and you're talking about a team of box players that won a field championship.
Yeah. Now so I mean, Dave Huntley, it was like a second father to me. I love him. I miss him. I think about him every day. And we were in Philadelphia together. He brought me in because when I was in New York, we really brought in a lot of Americans, and so I knew a lot of the guys. And we had a few, like we had Joe Walters, who was great. We had a few great defenders. Brett Queener, our goaltender, obviously. But the one thing, like, Dave was so funny because he just got it, and he believed in, like, one thing that I learned from him was, first of all, when you're at practice and you're doing video, I came from Adam Mueller, who was so technical, but Adam Mueller was drafted to the Detroit Turbos. He'd never seen box lacrosse before. So he saw it in a whole different light. Like, there were certain things that we do in the game that you've just always done, like taking receipts and retaliations and stuff, that he just thought was so stupid. And he would ask us to explain why we did it. And the answer was always just because it's how it's done, which was actually quite stupid. But our video sessions were so long and so technical. And I did my first one for Dave, and he just said no. And he said the brain can only absorb what the ass can endure. Mm-hmm. And that was Dave's method. Is he was like, pick the most important things, break it down into 3 or 4-minute videos, and that's it, or we're going to lose them. And the other thing that he was really good at, and this is also something that Adam was great at too, is when it came to constructing a team, so many guys get in their head, okay, this is the team I'm going to have. This is what I want. This is how we're going to do it. Well, we ended up with a certain group of players. And, the first year we did it, it was basically guys for Team Canada. It was very, very similar team. And then the 2 tournaments overlapped, so we had to make some adjustments. But what Dave was the best at was building around what he had and taking what the players were good at, and highlighting it, and then working a system based around the skills we have. And I'll give you a perfect example. Now it's a box lacrosse example, but in Philadelphia we had a guy called John Christmas, and he wasn't producing, and Dave really wanted to work him into the offense. And John Tucker said, let's come up with something. Like, I'm thinking we're going to run this seal or run this screen or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And Dave said, like, John Christmas is fast. Pass him the ball on the boards and tell him to run really fast past the guy and shoot. And that's what we did, and it worked. He just saw it in the most basic way possible. But he loved, and this is what I said earlier, but he loves to learn, like always asking questions. And, he would watch and he'd notice something, and he would get so excited that he was learning something new. So he was able to take the talent we had and sort of fiddle around with the lines and make sure we had the best chemistry. And man, we had some, we ran a few set plays. We sort of would modify box lacrosse plays for that team because part of the problem, and this goes back to actually Americans in the NLL, is like I said, the structure of, we were playing a field lacrosse with a bunch of box lacrosse players, and we wouldn't have won if we tried to play field lacrosse.
Right.
because that's not what we were good at. So we had to play sort of a hybrid version of outdoor box lacrosse and take the skills that we were good at and translate them. And, that's the problem was for the opposite. Like Joe Walters, who was on the Toronto Nationals, was in the NLL, and they kept trying to change him into a box lacrosse player. And once coaches, and Casey is the perfect example. When we were trading for him in New York, somebody said to Adam, like, Casey's not a good box lacrosse player. And Adam said, that's fine. We're not a good box lacrosse team. So, that people are trying to, people are trying to turn him into something we're not. We're going to take what he's good at and we're going to highlight it. And so I said to him, how are we going to do that? And he said, well, I don't know. That's your problem. But the idea was right. So.
Right. Well, that Nationals also having Brett Queener for a goalie. He was one of the most exciting goalies of the era because you never knew if he was going to rush it, score it, whatever.
I don't think he knew either. And I don't know if you remember, but he broke his hand in the semifinal. He played that final with a broken hand. It was, it was this big, and he was so intense. And then his brother, BH Bryce, came with us too. But he was great. But we had like Brody Merrill, who was just Brody was just the best. Like, we had a play called Brody Go Get the Ball. Like, and he could take the ball from anyone. He could play a whole game. We had Gary Gate for a while. John Grant Jr. came back and scored 5 goals and a half in his first game back after, a year later, we all thought he was going to die. Or a year earlier, we thought he was going to die. And with that staph infection, and he came back. And, Merrick Thompson, I'm not sure Merrick Thompson missed a shot all year. Jeff Zwicky, like you look back and you think of some of these guys. Our second midfield line was Dan Dawson, Sean Williams, and I can't remember who the third one was, but like they're Hall of Famers everywhere, but playing a different game. And sort of the magic of Dave was figuring out how to almost invent a new game to make it work for us. So it was a lot of fun.
Right. Let's move over to some of the summer ball stuff. And you are part of the Coach of the Year team with Collie over in Brooklyn. Let's talk about those days, because again, you're in a lot of these places like Brampton and things. We're coming after the championships, and more of the rebuilds. So really, when you really had to get your sleeves rolled up and really find ways to make these teams competitive.
Yeah, we my last year with Brooklyn, that's when we beat Peterborough in 7, and we went to the finals, and we got spanked in the finals, but it was still so much fun. And we were and same with Brampton. Like we went to the playoffs, a lot of young guys, but that's where it came back to just. I mean, Brooklyn, we had the luxury of having Sean Williams. It was that was right when sort of Tucker got sick, and he had a lot on his plate, obviously, but when he came, it was his distraction. He was super focused. And when you have leadership like that and Derek Sutton's, it helps. But that's when, the one thing I loved about Brooklyn, we practiced every Monday, no matter what, and guys showed up, and we were able to put, systems to a degree, more like a style, but we were very technical, and we just, to me, one of the most dying arts in lacrosse is pick setting, and guys don't set good picks anymore. You'll see guys, that's the one thing I'm very proud of. My son Trey, who plays for the Warriors, is just, I think he's the best pick setter in the league, and if he's not, he's up there. He went from being the best player in midget to a pick setter, so he said, okay, I'm going to go get guys open. And my Brooklyn team and my Brampton team worked so hard on that, and the focus was, working to get the other guy open as hard as you work to get yourself open. And, in Brooklyn, we also lucked out because Zach Higgins just caught fire, and he was unbeatable for a while. And I think he faced so many shots that wore him down a bit, but
right.
But yeah, we were just really technical. Wayne was good to work with. I bump into him now and then, and it's, we get along well, and he let me have he gave me a pretty long leash to do what I wanted, and it worked out. And you know, maybe we weren't the best collection of players, but we were the best team. And that's why we had some success.
Right. Now with Prout back, it seems as though we're going back to the old ways of guys coming in playing for the front of the jersey and not the back of the jersey. And I think that's really important in Brooklyn.
So I think Gavin did a really good job. So I bumped into Gavin at the game. Him and I don't talk as much anymore, but I saw Dean Link, and they actually drafted a kid from Orangeville who plays at Cornell, and I got his info for them. Orangeville accidentally didn't provide it, I guess, but I think they're going to have a real good year because the Whitby kids coming up, like the Lucas Littlejohn, for example, who is just so good. Like he's so good. He's down at school. He was already the best athlete, and then he went down to school, and they have such a regimen down there, where he came back in even better shape. And he just hit 100 points in college last weekend, and he's just dominant. And they're like, it sort of reminds me of when Dyson was at Duke, and Dyson scored 100 goals, and he came out, and I remember there was an international tournament and Quint Kesnick was commentating it, and he said, Dyson was carrying the ball and passing the ball and stuff. And he said, I've seen Dyson play for years at Duke. I didn't know he could do all that, but when I mentioned it to the other players, they all sort of laughed at me and said, yeah, of course he can. Like, he's been doing it here for years. That's what Lucas is going to be like next year. They found a spot for him at Richmond, and it's working, so you can't criticize it. But he's using like a quarter of his toolbox, and he's still got 100 points. So he's going to dominate. And the problem I think some of the summer teams have now is the very best players who are away at college are only going in that league for 2 years, because they're going. You've seen a lot more Canadians going the PLL route. You can't do both anymore. Right. So, I think Brooklyn, Gav's done a good job of. They had a really solid draft, I thought, this year, but also the alumni. I just got an email. John Fusco and Eric Peroni are starting an alumni association, like, for real now, and bringing a lot of the old guys back and trying to make it a thing again, like it used to be. Like we used to pack the place, and it needs to get back to that, because I think they've got a real good shot this year, and I would love to see the Mann Cup come home.
Well, they're convincing players, because you got Mark Matthews back, you got Stanisci back, a whole slew of. I think there's 5 goalies.
Yeah, and they're all good. And
every one of them is NLL, right? So
yeah, and they, Gavin does a good job, but I think the guys also like playing for Joel, and that's the one thing I've always, I've known Joel a long time, and the one thing you can always say about him is that the guys like playing for him. He knows what he's doing, and yeah, I'm actually excited to go watch him play this year. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's like the Merchants, though. Everybody wants to play for Ryan.
Yeah.
That kind of energy and that kind of enthusiasm, it's hard for that not to rub off on your team, and it's showed over the years.
I'll tell you, I met Ryan Degerden when I was coaching the Gales. He was at Onondaga, and I sent a text message to all the players when I came in, and I was excited to meet him. And his very first game back, he got hit and he broke his leg. And I was, for whatever, I'm always at the arena 3 hours early. Something happened with one of the kids, and I was late. So I didn't get to meet him before the game. And when he broke his leg, I went in the room, and he apologized to me for breaking his leg. He wanted to play so bad, and I thought, you know what, I like this guy, and I've been friends with him ever since. It's nice when you see somebody who's come up, having, a good guy like that having success. And I thought the President's Cup was great. I think Brooklyn did what they could. I think they were at a bit of a disadvantage, but
I think what really showed the character of that team really was the playoffs leading up to the President's Cup.
Oh yeah,
the way they finally got the Six Nations bug off their back.
Yeah,
and they just absolutely played their game.
Yeah, I thought they were excellent. I thought the 25th anniversary jersey was fun.
Yeah.
I thought they did a lot of good things last year, and including moving to Iroquois Park. I mean, I love Luther Vipon, but I think moving there was a great idea. get out of children's and have everybody together. And it was great. I think they look pretty good this year again as well. So we'll see how that goes. I know they changed the rules in Senior B a little bit to try and make it so that the President's Cup roster didn't cost more than a National Lacrosse League roster. But I think until that's totally eliminated, it's hard. So
I agree. I want to get a couple of coaching questions with you now, and it's what's different now coaching than say 10 or 15 years ago? What's the biggest changes do you think that you would have to be behind the bench and made?
Well, it's funny because I stopped coaching really when my kids started junior, so I haven't done much of it. But towards the end, I think it's the coming up now with all these club teams and all this stuff. It's at the kids level. It's getting the commitment, and it's a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of the times it's finding a way to tell people they're not as good as they think they are without hurting their feelings.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to score 50 goals. Not everybody's making it like our midget team that won the provincials in the box and field. We I don't think we lost a game all year. I think we had a tie. We were dominant. We had 8 players drafted, which I believe is a record. And I think 3 of them made Junior A the first year. Now, I think there's probably all 8 of them are in Junior A now, but that's sort of how it should be. And, we were lucky because we had sort of fixed the egos for the players. So there's so many other things now. There's the beast and the edge and the evolve and getting guys to commit fully and convince them that, box lacrosse is the way to go and not some showcase tournament in Maryland. Like if I am an American coach and I want a big midfielder who is going to dodge from the top, I'll take an American kid every time because there's 1,000 of them and 900 of their parents can afford to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, I think the problem coaches are having, especially in box lacrosse, is convincing kids how important it is and making it their priority. Otherwise, like the rules, the skill sets, everything is stayed. Well, the other one is cross checking because everybody's field lacrosse minded, and then pick setting because if you make the slip pick and you get open, you're going to score a goal. So it's more about managing egos and commitment right now, I think.
Right. The Olympics are on the horizon, and sixes. First of all, what's your thoughts on sixes?
So I went and watched it. It was in Oshawa a couple times. I mean, it's really fun. Like it's a fast-paced game. I thought it was great. I would have preferred the more like if it was going to be field lacrosse, I would prefer the traditional field lacrosse. I think there's more than 30 teams in the World Championships now, but I logistically I could understand why they couldn't do that. So I enjoy sixes. It's fun. It's the sort of skill set lends itself towards Canadians. It's not my favorite, but like lacrosse is going to the Olympics. So,
right.
It's amazing. So, I'm just happy that it's getting there. And I'm happy for there's going to be some really tough decisions. And there's going to be some really, really good players that aren't going, but for the ones that get to, like, it's awesome. Like I'm 51 and I never would have dreamed that this was happening. So it's exciting.
One of the things Doug Louie and I were talking about over in Prague in some of our evenings of chatting about lacrosse in the future is this what's going to be the future is sixes? And is this where they're going to put Lacrosse Canada? Is this where they're going to put all their energy in building this because this is the wave?
Well, it's maybe. I think the minor box lacrosse system won't be affected by it. I think the problems that box lacrosse has now will continue to be the problems. I don't think sixes will affect that. I think for especially for the younger kids, when like our field lacrosse season is right now before the box season starts, and it's like it's freezing and it's miserable, and I think logistically, I think it makes a lot of sense for when our season is.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like lacrosse people, I find are a lot of them they really like to stick to their roots. Like guys bitched when plastic sticks came in. Guys bitched when we started going offense defense. People think that 4 quarters over 3 periods is stupid. Someone's going to find a problem with any change you make, but it. I guess time will tell. Like if it works, it works. It's a fun game to watch. It's faster. It takes away the specialty positions. There's no more, I guess if you're a Fogo, you don't like it, but I don't, I don't know. I haven't really paid enough attention to it yet or put enough thought into it to, to have a real educated opinion. But I mean, if that's the way they go, that's the way they go. And you have to support it. There's pros and cons, but I guess really the only answer is time will tell.
Right. Now, we keep talking about lacrosse being full-time. Does that kill summer ball? It's already on the ropes with fans. We can't draw flies in 2/3 of the arenas, and then in Peterborough you can give 3,000, and Six Nations, if it's an important game, you can get 1,500. But as for all the other arenas, if we get 150 people, it's like, hey man, that's a good night.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? Because the games are so good.
Yeah. I love summer ball. I like it more than watching NLL.
I think I don't think it does. I think summer ball will continue. I think some of the costs are getting pretty ridiculous, and that's the same. And that's the same with it's hurting hockey too. I found out how much it costs to. Frank Littlejohn was telling me how much it costs to rent the ice for his U18 tryouts. I almost died. Now I know there was some discussion about the National Lacrosse League flipping seasons. I think that might hurt summer ball, but it'll hurt major for sure. But then major would go back to a true amateur sport. I think it'd be good for junior because you would, when people were already in lacrosse mode, I think it would be good for some of the arenas. But in this area, people want to go to their cottages, not to an arena on a Saturday night. So I don't know. I think that the players don't care if there's 150 or 200 people or no people in the arena. When you're on the floor, you can't tell anyway. But I think the people that are paying the bills, probably agree with you that it hurts and something is going to have to be done or it's going to hurt the game. Yeah.
Right. Without people in the stands and without the sponsorship, we've seen it in Brampton when Brendan Steele was no more, and you only have a few alumni in the crowd. All of a sudden, you're working with. You're the feeder for the league. As soon as you develop them, they're going somewhere to get paid, right?
Yeah, and that is true. And I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how you fix that.
Right.
Some of the smaller markets, especially, I know. Here in Whitby, we had the association, or sorry, the board of governors or whatever they're called for the Warriors do a good job. I know when you talk about Mark Matthews, his dad used to be the sponsorship guy, and he was the best. Like he was retired and he would go personally to see all the sponsors and shake their hands and it was a great time. And I know they work very hard. You were mentioning Doug and Matt Shamla on the Gales, same thing. And, running golf tournaments and things like that. Like it's hard now even to fill a golf tournament.
Yeah.
People don't have money now. So, you look and a game used to be $5 or $10, and a lot of them are charging $15 now because they have to. And I think it's turning some people away. So, but I honestly, I haven't got a clue how to fix that. So
I always said you gear it to the youth. Yeah. And even though you may not charge them anything if they're wearing their team jerseys or wearing a jersey even, and they get in for free, that's your base down the road.
Oh, 100%.
Up there, even if they're not playing, if you can instill the love of the game there, they're eventually going to grow up and have kids of their own. And if we can get that, then we get the mushroom, right?
There's nothing better than when you go to a lacrosse game this summer and you see 10 or 12 kids in their jerseys banging on the glass and then tarps off, waving them in the air when there's a goal. And it is really how you're 100% right. You get them loving the game. And, I have a picture somewhere of my two boys, or two of my three boys, sitting on their grandmother's lap on the glass watching a game. And, now they're both in junior, they're both away at school. And, you're right. That's how it started. And it's my favorite picture. So yeah, I wish they would do more of that. But, you know, another problem is with the minor, like all these kids now, so many of the parents have these dreams of them going to all these different schools that, you have minor lacrosse almost every night, and when you don't, you're off with Beast, or you're off with Edge, or you're off with Evolve, or whatever, and they don't have the time to go to the games. So, you know,
The other point that I have is, is the NLL missing out because now with everybody with ADD, nobody can watch anything for too long. To get those highlight reel goals, wouldn't it be great to have an all-star game and a skills competition like the PLL does? Do you think the PLL is missing the boat on this?
I I really enjoyed the All-Star game. I remember actually to this day there was a Junior A All-Star game at Ted Reeve Arena, and John Grant Jr. in the breakaway competition, and just everybody. I like Sean Williams played in the game. I went and watched, and it was so good, man. Like, and that's like one of the other things that was being a coach at that level that people don't appreciate is getting to see some of these guys practice.
Mm-hmm.
And they pull out some of these crazy things in a game, but the stuff they do in practice is even better. But I I agree the NLL should have a game. I'm just not sure that logistically the league can afford to have a game.
Right.
Because if the numbers came out, like you said, Buffalo, Colorado, amazing. I live in Oshawa. I went to, like, unfortunately the games sort of overlapped with Cornell a lot, and I went down there instead. But the games I got the first game and the last game, and they were the two best games of the year. And I think we're about 5,000 seats, but they sold out, and it was wild. And when I'm around town, I see people in Firewall stuff right now, and it's neat. But I was with that team when they were the Philadelphia Wings, and we were getting 17,000.
Yeah.
And so it was a little depressing at first, but you have to build somewhere. But so many teams struggling, like Philadelphia shutting down, and a couple teams in trouble. I'm not sure the league can afford to have the game. So,
Right.
but it would be like the skills competition, especially like the stuff these guys can do now. It's awesome. So,
Right. I want to close with this, and that is, how do you want to be remembered in lacrosse? But I want to do it in two stages. I want to do, how do you want to be remembered as a player? How do you want to be remembered as a coach?
I think I would prefer that people didn't remember me as a player. I as a player, I think I want to be known as a good teammate. The one I hear the most about is when we were at the President's Cup. I cut a cast off because I broke my foot. I couldn't play, and I cut my cast off and taped it and tried to play. And it sounds like a great story, but it was just the stupidest thing I've ever done, and it hurt so bad when that tape came off.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how much I wanted to win, and I that's what I would like. I'd like to be remembered as a good teammate.
Right.
I'm lucky because I think people remember me being better than I was, and I'm okay with that, right? So, so that's what I say. I would prefer people didn't remember. I'm happy that they're hearing things that are maybe exaggerated, because that works better for me. As a coach, I hope that I made somebody better. Like, I hope that somebody, I just hope I helped somebody get better, or help them see things a little different, and made sort of an impact. And that's when you bump into guys, and there's so many people now. I bump into people, and sometimes I don't remember them, and they'll say something. I was watching the Gales preseason game, and I sort of had a reputation for like I say a lot of things I probably shouldn't. And a parent pulled me aside and told me something that I'd said to his kid, and he thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard, and I couldn't believe I actually said it. But I'm not going to repeat it, unfortunately. But I'm sure I'll see and I'll tell you what it was. But they remembered me for a positive reason, so it was good.
Wait a second. We're not going to hear about it?
Well, I mean, no.
Is it that bad?
No, it's not that bad. I like one example, another parent told me that, one of my famous lines was I would turn the lacrosse practice into a track practice. And somebody commented on that, and I have certain pet peeves.
You don't have to be specific. You don't have to be specific. You're blunt.
I'm blunt, yes, and I like there's certain things in lacrosse that I think need to be changed, and especially with kids, first and foremost, is like wear your helmet properly, put your chin strap on. Like you see these guys playing, and the chin strap is protecting their balls, not their chin. Like it's ridiculous, and they're going to get killed. And I've had a few heated conversations with kids about that. I hate the internet. Dave Huntley started a rule. He used to refer to them as the 18 idiots. And there are people who go on, you guys have your platforms, whatever, and put out good stuff. But just these people in the comments that just last year, I couldn't tell you how many times I had to read about how Matt Vince sucks. Like the best goalie in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. Or imagine you're Nick Rose. And I'm not positive this is what happened, but the general consensus is that last year when Toronto was struggling, Calgary needed a goalie. Nick Rose lives in Oakville. He works in Oakville, where they practice. His life is easy, and he sort of said, I'm an unrestricted free agent. He goes to Calgary, picks up his whole life, gives Holochuk a chance to play, and then knowing that they're going to get something in return and he's still going to come back. And he makes that sacrifice. He's done everything in the world for Toronto for all these years. 3 years ago, he was the best player in the league.
Yep.
And then he comes back and people are like, oh, he's too old. He sucks now. Why do we take him back? And it's just it just drives me insane. And I think they're going to win the whole thing this year. And part of it's going to be off of his back. So, we have very strict rules with our teams about what you can or cannot say on the internet. Like, don't make the team look bad. Don't, kids are stupid. They're going to say stupid things. You can't totally police it, but you try to mitigate it as much as you can. So, I don't know, stuff like that.
I agree 100%. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Well, it's a very quick hour, I tell you, to delve into your life for the last number of years. I really appreciate you taking the time and going through these things with us and some of the stories that came along with it. Really, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I got to tell you, Paul, once we go into private mode, I want to hear the story.
Deal.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to hear it. And no. What I want to say is this. To that point, honesty is something that, as a coach, is worth a lot. A coach has to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as a person who likes to be honest, like I am, I find myself always on the other side of the fence, going, "How did I get here?"
Yeah.
Right? You end up on that other side of the fence, and it's only because you're trying to be honest. Listen, it's been a pleasure watching you play. It's been a pleasure watching you coach, and it's been a really big pleasure watching you do this interview. Yeah. I think we asked the least questions of any interview ever. You got the record for least questions required to do the hour. You're a wonderful promoter of the game.
Thank you very much.
Fun to listen to. And the love of the game, it just comes right out. And I got to tell you, It's not just that you worked hard as a player or worked hard as a coach, but you work hard at loving the game, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. He's Paul Stewart. Up above him is Gary Groob. I'm Candid Frank. This is NLL Lacrosse Talk, seen usually on Thursdays at 4 p.m. The next guy that we have up, or gal, is going to have to work really hard, because we're probably going to have to get an extra 20, 25 questions, Gary, to do.
All right.
Hey?
I think I can do it.
It's been a real pleasure, Paul. Thank you for it very much. And everybody, thank you for watching. Hey, listen, pick up a stick, and you'll figure out what everybody who's a guest on this show and the people who host this show understand about the game of lacrosse. Until next week.
Thanks, guys.